Welcome to In Your Defense, Galveston and Beyond.
Welcome to In Your Defense, Galveston and Beyond with Mark Diaz and John Clements. Mark is a passionate criminal defense attorney with over 25 years of experience defending the rights of Texans. And together we're excited to discuss all things criminal defense law. So Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. So today's episode is Understanding Plea Deals, Why They Matter More Than You Think. And I'm excited to jump in and learn about this. So Mark, every TV show with a courtroom in it, you hear about plea deals and you get this image of what they're like. What are they really like in Texas courts?
The reality is plea bargaining is how most cases are disposed of, right? And so even in a case with certain exceptions, right, like capital murder, something where we know there's never going to be an offer and we're just going to have to go to trial. But basically, in almost every case, an offer is going to be made, right? An offer to resolve the case. Now, is it a good offer? Is it a bad offer? Well, obviously, it depends on the circumstances. Do I like some parts of the offer, but not the other parts? And so we're going to renegotiate. It's definitely a process, but that is how the majority of cases in courts are resolved, is through plea bargaining. If every case that was filed went to trial, imagine, you would have a backlog of years of cases trying to get to trial.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me, I'm inferring this, that both sides of the case and the judge probably all would prefer to move in that direction if possible. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sometimes have judges that will not intervene, because that would be improper, but will encourage the parties to reach a resolution.
I see. And then a follow-up question to that one would be something I didn't realize. You mentioned that there's negotiations that can happen. So how is it pretty common that you'll have to do some give and take, some compromise to find a plea deal that would work for all parties?
Oh, yes. So it could be anything from negotiating the numbers of years of a probated sentence, negotiating whether it's straight probation, which means a conviction, or deferred adjudication, which ultimately leads to a dismissal. It could be the terms of reporting, right? It could be, there's so many things that may lead us one way or the other in that negotiation. Also, it depends on the type of case, right?
So then it sounds to me like it's not necessarily a strict yes or no question. So it could be that a plea deal is the way to go. It could be a case where maybe you don't want to go that route or can't go that route. And then it's going to depend on the negotiations as to, kind of the result of that plea deal.
Right. And the other thing is, so let's say the negotiations are, I'm in felony court and my client is charged with a felony and I want a misdemeanor, right? And so maybe we're fighting about that and they want to offer me probation on a felony and I want it to be a misdemeanor and I have a good reason why. So then maybe if we're going to drop it down to a misdemeanor, now are we still talking about deferred adjudication or probation, or are they going to want the number of days in jail? Like, there's just so much that goes into it, depending upon, because every case is different, right? The charge may be the same, but the facts are going to be different between two cases. And so I may have two people charged with the same thing looking at completely different plea bargains depending upon their history. Just so many things come into play that, if you've been convicted of a felony in the past, technically you're not eligible for probation again, right? But again, sometimes we're able to negotiate that and get a probation for someone who's technically not eligible. But again, it's just going to go, it's going to be a part of the case, whether we end up taking a plea or not. There is going to be negotiations at some point, even if we don't reach an agreement.
Got it. So you raise an interesting point with, whether we can move forward with a plea offer or go to trial. So what are some of the risks of going to trial versus accepting a plea offer?
Biggest risk is if you go to trial and you lose, you are going to have a conviction. Whereas if we work out a deal for the deferred adjudication, you're not going to get convicted. I literally had this conversation with one of the attorneys in my office today about we have a client with a really good case who is considering taking a plea that we don't love, but it's because he's so afraid of becoming a convicted felon that he doesn't know if he's willing to take the risk of going to trial. And these are things that people take into consideration. And obviously you should. The thing about a jury trial is I can't tell you what 12 citizens are going to do. If we're talking about a felony, 12 citizens, misdemeanor 6, but I can't tell you what they're going to do. I mean, if I could read the minds of the jurors, I wouldn't need to do this podcast right now. I'd have so much money.
Yeah, I feel like that's a mixed bag though, because there's some stuff you probably don't want to read.
Right.
So this brings up another question I had, and that's if I hire you and I'm in court for some reason and I decide to take a plea offer, does that make me? What does that do with my criminal record? Do I have a misdemeanor or felony on file, or do I not?
So that would depend upon what the plea is to, right? So if we're talking about, and this is something that happens that I witness a lot, and it really kind of bothers me, but in misdemeanor courts in Galveston County, every day before they call the docket, the judges give the audience 3 choices. You can reset your case to hire a lawyer, you can apply for a court-appointed lawyer, or you can speak to the state yourself and see what they might have to offer on your case. Every day, people decide, I want to talk to the prosecutor. And I sit there and I listen, and the prosecutors, they go through this spiel. I don't represent you or represent the state of Texas, blah, blah, blah. And so they'll go through their spiel, talk about the case, and then at the end of the deal, they may say, I'll tell you what, I'll offer you time served, which means no fine, no time in jail, just time served. Yeah, but what they don't then say is, and that means you're going to have a conviction on your record for this case for the rest of your life. And they don't tell them that, let's say it's a theft from Walmart. They don't tell them that a conviction for theft is a crime of moral turpitude, and you're not getting a job anywhere if you've got a crime of moral turpitude on your record, right? So yes, it does matter what the plea bargain is going to be, because you could have collateral consequences, right? And your attorney should be able to discuss those with you. And so the deferred, if it's a deferred, that means ultimately you will not be convicted, right? If it's straight probation, you're going to be convicted and it's going to be there for life. So it is important to have that conversation with your lawyer and find out, if I take this deal they're offering me, what are any collateral consequences that I may suffer?
Yeah, that's a great point. And just a follow-up question on that, if the prosecutor in this hypothetical example doesn't tell me some of these other consequences, is that because they don't have to, or it's in the document that I didn't read? Like, how's that happen?
Because in order for you to talk to the state, they make you sign a document waiving your rights, explaining that the prosecutor works for the state of Texas, not for you. So yes, they don't have a duty to tell you all that. That's why, I've done it on here, I've done it on videos, YouTube, whatever. It's a horrible idea to go represent yourself in criminal court. It really doesn't matter what it is. It's kind of like, when I'm sick, I call my doctor, right? I don't get on Google or YouTube and see what my symptoms are and try to treat myself. I go to the doctor and say, fix me, but people do it in Galveston County every day.
I know, which is kind of a shock, because there's such a great resource in Mark Diaz right here. Just like pick up the phone and call him.
I used to have a joke that, so in one court, there was court staff that would give the instructions, not the judge, right? And so she would go, these are your 3 options, and then she would be done. And one day I said, well, there's always option 4. And she said, what's option 4? And I said, hire Mark Diaz.
That's awesome. Love it. So I want to talk a little bit more about the value that you bring your clients. You've mentioned that some of the benefits of having you specifically with helping them get a better plea deal. How else can you help people get a good plea deal?
Well, I mean, it's going to depend upon. So sometimes, as a matter of fact, we've had this one recently. Sometimes the plea deal is as simple as negotiating down the term of months, let's say, before a person has to renew a professional license. So let's say I get nurses a lot, right? And let's say they're giving me deferred adjudication and my nurse doesn't have to renew for 12 months and the offer is 12 months. Well, I need it to go away before then because she's going to have to renew her license in that time frame, and I need this to not be a conviction by the time she has to renew. So it may be me presenting that mitigating evidence to the prosecutor to get him down to 9 months, or, so it's going to change from client to client or, case to case. Another obvious big one is, can we get a felony down to a misdemeanor? Because obviously felonies have typically larger impacts on people's lives than misdemeanors do.
Yeah. So it sounds like you know the nuances of the law. You kind of know the end game and are able to kind of guide discussions in that way. And I was curious too. I assume that you probably have a good network. Like you probably see a lot of the same lawyers, a lot of the same judges. Do you think that benefits you as your ability to get things done?
It does. So much so that to the point that, and I learned this many years ago, I don't, when I was younger, I would take cases basically anywhere you would pay me to go. Not anymore. And the rare occasion that I take cases that are outside of my area, I charge my client extra because I hire local counsel. So it's invaluable to know the judges, the prosecutors, everyone that in the game, right? I can tell, I know certain courts that will do this, certain courts that won't do that. But if I'm in a jurisdiction I've never been in before, I don't know that. So if you're going to want me to travel, we're going to hire another lawyer and he's going to be local so that I have someone giving me all that information that I need to know before I try to do something.
Yeah. And I think your answers really for the whole podcast have pointed to some of the important aspects of law that maybe we don't consider, that maybe aren't written in the legal code, but are nonetheless important to know about and to excel at. And I did have a follow-up question about plea deals, and that's, what are some warning signs that you see that a plea deal might not be the best way to go or might need more negotiation?
Wow, that's a tough question. So I'll give you an example. If the first offer I get is really, really good, then I know that the state has a problem and I need to find it, right? Same thing the other way. If I look at a plea offer and I'm like, what? Then I got to figure out, what am I not looking at right that they're starting so high, right? What did I miss? So it depends on what I see. Like I said, if I walk in court and I have a great offer, like my client would be dumb to turn this down. Without any negotiation, I'm like, I'm missing something. They're not telling me something. I need to keep digging because they wouldn't make this offer unless there was a weakness. That's
such good advice. It sounds backwards, but then you explain it and it sounds perfect. Like, oh, there's something wrong with this picture, right? It's too good to be true. Oh man. So Mark, it's just been so fascinating to learn about plea deals and how you help clients and what that relationship can look like. And so again, just thank you so much for being on the show today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Defense on the Coast with Texas criminal defense attorney Mark Diaz. To connect with Mark, you can visit texascriminaljustice.com. And as always, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.